Thank you so much, Mark, and hello, everyone. Great to be with you as always. Really great to be here for the third day in a row on the Daily Sit to drop into practice together. And so I want to begin with a gentle invitation to more fully arrive, just taking a deep breath, finding ourselves and our bodies, in our spaces, opening to what is here in this moment, to receiving some Torah, some inspiration that might ignite some spark of resonance as we enter Shabbat together. And I want to share a note of inspiration for our practice today from Parshat Balak. So the Shabbat is a double parsha, Chukat Balak. My colleague Rabbi Miriam yesterday, for those of you who were here, taught a little bit about Chukat, and so I want to share a little bit about Balak today. In this parsha, Balak, the king of Moab, becomes fearful of Am Yisrael, of the people. And he hires a prophet, Balaam, to curse them. But when he takes Balaam to their dwelling places, and Balaam goes out to see the people, the parsha says that God puts a word in his mouth. God puts a word in his mouth, and instead of cursing the people as he has been hired to do, he blesses them. And so Balak tries more times. He brings Balaam to a new vantage point, hoping that if he can see the encampment differently, from a different perspective, then he'll finally curse them. But Balaam still blesses the people. And finally, at the third vantage point, which should be the worst, it's described as a wasteland. So you can imagine Balak thinking to himself, okay, there's no way, seeing this wasteland, that Balaam will bless them. This for sure will be the curse, right? But it's at this vantage point, this lowest vantage point, this wasteland, that Balaam gives the best blessing of all, the famous Matovu, Halecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, that we say every morning in our liturgy. How good are your tents, Yaakov, Jacob, Mishkenotecha, your dwelling places, Israel. It's a little ironic, right? This lowest point, this wasteland, is where this beautiful, time-enduring blessing comes forth. And our Torah describes Balaam, this prophet, as a man with an open eye. And I take this to mean that Balaam could see reality clearly. There was clarity in his perception, meaning that it didn't actually matter from which vantage point he was looking, whether he was seeing the people from the heights or in their wasteland. He could see their holiness. And in that place of clear seeing, of clear perception, he was in some way available for the divine to put a word in his mouth, for the Holy One to speak a blessing through him, to be a channel of blessing. And I think that this has so much to do with our practice, where we really bring an aspiration to see reality with openness, to see clearly, to pay attention and perceive reality itself, rather than what we think about it, our habits of judging and interpreting it. And in so doing, in that clarity of perception, creating an openness for our experience to emerge, for it to be fresh, for it to be new and alive, for it to be different than what we may have expected or thought about it. And perhaps it is this openness, this way of perceiving that makes us then, that can make us available for something deeper to move through us, for some kind of wisdom, some kind of blessing to come through us in our response. Rather, whether that response is just how we're showing up in our embodied presence or how we're speaking to what is happening. And of course, our Jewish tradition constantly emphasizes the sacredness of language and the power of words. Words can be destructive, idle, distracting, unconscious. They can also be creative, heartfelt, healing, beautiful, generative. And then there are the words that God puts in our mouths that flow from us naturally when we are in that place of seeing clearly, open and available for that Ruach HaKodesh, that holy wind of inspiration to flow through us. And with this kind of clarity, no matter what vantage point we're witnessing, the lowest of the low, the wasteland, or the highest of the heights, no matter what perspective we might behold, we can bring blessing. We can bring blessing into the world. And so I want to invite this sense of openness and this aspiration for clear seeing into our practice today. That we can pay kind attention to what is happening in our experience and practice doing so without analyzing, without judging, but opening to that deep, abiding awareness that's always there beneath the surface. And so I invite you to go ahead and settle into a posture in the body that will be supportive of mindful presence. You can make yourself comfortable, perhaps noticing if you're holding tension anywhere in the body, and just gently inviting the body to relax, to soften. At the same time, feeling that sense of wakefulness, alertness, uprightness. We're not here to passively experience our lives, but to wake up. To this reality. In gathering our attention to settle here in the present moment, what is happening right now. Perhaps resting the attention on an anchor in the body, such as the breath, or the sensation of the hands, as a way to support the mind in settling here in the present. Allowing our attention to become flush with the awareness of what is happening right here, right now. Physical sensation, if emotion is present. Simply acknowledging what is arising in our awareness with clear, direct knowing. No need to fix or control or analyze this experience. Simply observing and allowing. You might notice that a preference emerges, something unpleasant in our experience. There might be a tendency to push it away. To want what is arising to be different than it is. Noticing that too. We hold the entirety of our experience, all of its ebbs and flows, whether a beautiful, lovely, heightened viewpoint, or a low point, that wasteland, whatever it is. Holding it in our awareness with clarity. With kindness. Noticing the wandering mind, returning the attention here to the present moment, meeting whatever is arising with clear, direct knowing. Softening our judgment, softening our stories about what is here. Simply observing with clarity, with kindness. And for the last few minutes of our practice, I invite you to see if there might be a blessing that wants to emerge from your heart. Any kind of blessing for yourself or another or the world. Could be as simple as inviting the mind to notice what is good, to notice the goodness that is present with the words ma tovu, ma tovu. How good it is. How good is this? What goodness is here? Bring us out of our sit with a chant. Matavu, 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 matavu. Matavu, 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 matavu. Thank you so much for your presence and your practice.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's beautiful practice to end this really spectacular week of teaching and practice this week. And friends, we seal our practice today, as we do every day, by offering an opportunity for any of you who might be in mourning or observing your yard site at this time, or if it's your custom to join in the mourner's Kaddish, to do so. You can put the name or names of anyone you're honoring, remembering, holding in your heart today in the chat box now or after you recite Kaddish. If you're not reciting Kaddish, we encourage you to stay present to help create a minyan, a community of support for those who are. And if you are reciting the words, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit. And thanks to Max Bamberger holding our text space today for sharing the words of the Kaddish on the screen. You can unmute at this time if you're reciting Kaddish. Yid Gadal, Yid Kadash, Shemei
Amen.
Alma, Dibra,
Yom Echon, Hayeh, Magalah, Bisman, Karim, Yumru, Amen.
Amen.
Hey, Shmei, Rach, Yishtavach, Yitbar, Made Kudashah, Le'olam, Berchata, Shirata, Chata, V'nechmata, V'yama, Shlama, Rabba, Min Shama. Sundamamav, Huyat, Sishama.
Amen.
And friends, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're leaving us now, just a reminder for next week that I put in the chat the lineup of our teachers for next week, another beautiful lineup of teachers for next week. On Monday, Rabbi Dr. Mira Neshama Weil will lead us. There's no live sit on next Tuesday, which is, of course, Independence Day here in the US. And IJS will be closed, so we will not be live next Tuesday, but we will meet Wednesday through Friday, led by Yiska Smith, Emily Hertzlin, and our own Rebecca Schisler next Friday as well. So we hope to see you then. If you're leaving us now, of course, you're welcome to stay on. If you prefer, you can certainly just use this time and use our community as a container for continuing to sit with your practice and turn off the volume on your computer or device, or join us for sharing reflections on your experience with the practice today, or questions for Rebecca about the beautiful teaching about Parshat Balak, Hukat Balak. And you can put that in the chat box. If it's a question, please preface it by writing question in all caps. And thanks to Max for holding our space today beautifully. And thanks to Jet Bachman, who's been working with Max to train him. And we're going to be tag teaming, holding our tech space over the next few weeks. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Beautiful teaching. A couple of things came up for me. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. A couple of questions arose for me. First, I saw that our friend, colleague, Mira Weil, referred to some meditations that she's doing as indigenous meditation practices, which I think might have been the first time I've seen that word used. And it struck me today. I was thinking about it today just because this Torah portion, Balak, is such a great. There are a number of great Torah portions that really beautifully present opportunities for mindfulness practice and teaching. And this is a great one about the story about Bilam and transforming curses to blessings, and the donkey, and seeing clearly, as you were describing so beautifully. So I just wanted curious for you, because many of us have come to this practice, Jewish mindfulness meditation practice, from all directions, some from Eastern traditions, some never really ventured into that world, and are coming from within the Jewish world, Jewish practice. This just seems like, wow, this is such a good one. The question at the end of this is really, what do you think about that? Like, how do you experience this in terms of your teaching? Does this feel like a teaching that emerges organically from the Torah portion that we can experience as Mira seems to be put as a kind of an indigenous or native practice within our tradition? It's a big question.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mark. No, it's one of my favorite topics, actually, that I talk about all the time in my teaching and have been more and more, which is really the subject and the question of, what is Jewish meditation? What is Jewish mindfulness? What does it mean to be Jews who practice mindfulness, to practice mindfulness in a Jewish way? What is Jewish about mindfulness and meditation? Is it okay to practice mindfulness and meditation that is integrating wisdoms and practices and streams from other traditions? What are the universalities and the similarities in worldviews, right, between Judaism and other traditions, notably Buddhism, where we really learn so much of our mindfulness practices and teachings here in the West? And what are the distinctions? What are parts of the Jewish worldview that are really distinct, actually, and not similar to Buddhism or other contemplative traditions that we might draw upon? And so it is a really big topic. I can say for myself, on my own journey, where over the last 12 years or so, I've gone quite deeply, both in Jewish contemplative practices and spaces, and as Mira describes, like natively or indigenously Jewish approaches to contemplative practice, and also in Buddhist spaces, and also in not Buddhist or Jewish specifically spaces, but contemplative traditions that from other places as well. And for me on my own path, all of those experiences have been really important, and they all weave together in a way to inform my spiritual practice. And I think what's important for me when drawing from other traditions and teachings from outside of my own of Jewish tradition is to really carry the question in a sacred way. It's like a sacred question of what does it mean to do this consciously, relationally, respectfully, with a tremendous amount of care and also sanctity, right? For the essence of what each tradition is really aiming to guide us in. And I find also a lot of richness in really looking at what are the distinct Jewish worldviews. Actually, I know Mira, where she talks about indigenous Jewish meditation, she also uses the term hashkafa, which means like outlook or worldview. And there's so much there, I think, in a very deep place that really can guide us into finding a direction, really a kavanah, like an orientation towards our spiritual lives and the goals of spiritual practice from within the Jewish tradition itself. And actually, one of those worldviews that I talk about a lot, specifically in this conversation about the distinctions between Judaism and Buddhism, is that in the Jewish tradition, one way that we conceive of really the peak of spiritual development is prophecy, which relates so beautifully to this part, right? It's about becoming that clear channel for the divine, for that greater intelligence to move through us. And so in that way, the practice of mindfulness kind of becomes a way of tuning our instrument so that we can become as open and clear as possible.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly that. And also, just especially because you lead us in general on Fridays into Shabbat, that, that process, the process you were leading us through and the practice is essentially a Shabbat practice. Like the idea of moving it, that Shabbat is this time that we set aside to be, as you were describing, really to allow ourselves to become clear so that we can become channels for something deeper, greater, beyond ourselves that can flow through us, that we might describe as words of blessing, right? That are not really our words. And we recognize that they're coming through us and they might be shaped by our unique incarnation in this world, but that they're not of us. They're not created by us, that they flow through us. And that Shabbat is this weekly spiritual practice, whether people observe it for 25 hours or whether you take 3 minutes to say, I'm going to make Shabbat right now. And, you could use your instructions or suggestions as a grounding for doing that. This is what Shabbat's about. It's really about reattuning ourselves every 7 days and remind ourselves that, I'm not the master of the universe. I'm not not in control. And we do, you can't just do it every 7 days and then just run for 6 days and let the ego run wild and then hope that you're going to be able to corral it on the 7th day. So it just struck me that this was a great microcosm of Shabbat practice. And there's so many places in the tradition too where we see this, just the fact that the Midbar, that the wilderness plays such a key role both for Moses and for the prophets and for the whole people, right? That you have this amazing tradition that says the whole people went basically disconnected from the everyday and came to the place that was utterly quiet and still to hear the voice, right? And then to be sort of charged with now, go bring it forth out in the world in some way. It's very moving and powerful. We'll look and see if there's any other in here.
I'll just add, Mark, to what you said as far as Shabbat kind of being this practice that's described here in this parsha. Shabbat isn't just about slowing down and resting and becoming present. Also, one of the big traditions in Shabbat is to sing and pray, right? And also engage in Torah study and even speak words of Torah. And I think that's what this parsha is guiding us to also. It's like from that place of deep presence, of seeing things as they are, kind of more with that equanimity, that it's not about it being the wasteland or the most beautiful depiction. It's like being with what is here,
Mhm.
then we become channels for blessing. And there's something powerful for me going into Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday night. No matter how I'm feeling about my life, if something is going on that's really wonderful, or I'm really struggling emotionally, still to open my mouth and sing those praises and sing those psalms and sing about the goodness, and how through singing and saying the words, that can actually invoke that experience to come alive within my heart and in my consciousness. And so that's something to, I think, experiment with as well, just the power of words.
Yeah, well, it's a slight tangent, but there is a question from, I think it's Barry, about the use of a mantra, or at the end to use the chant. And Barry wrote, do you think incorporating a mantra in meditation practice is useful? If so, are there any mantras that particularly resonate with you? Ma Tovu sounds like it was a good one.
Yeah, another one I thought with this theme of the tov, the goodness, how good is this, is Gam Zela Tova, which means this too is for the good. As a kind of response to whatever's happening, particularly if it's challenging, what does it mean? How does it change our experience if we can invite ourselves into the possibility that from a greater perspective, this too might actually also be for the good?
Yeah.
And to expand on what I mean by good. Good doesn't necessarily mean pleasant, right? But I think about Breshit, which I reread recently, our creation story, where God says, let there be whatever there is, and then God looks upon it, and God says it was good, and saw that it was good. Saw that it was good. And so there's something there about, what does it mean just to, first of all, how does the quality of our looking actually shift and change the goodness that we're able to perceive? And also, is goodness, or this idea of tov, in some way connected actually just to something being created according to its design, like something being created and working and functioning and being in its design, and to affirm that there is this divine design, there's this intelligence that is at work in creation, in our experience.
Yeah, that's actually, I mean, it's interesting because it's kind of like a non-dualistic way of understanding that word tov, good. It's just like, this is how it, this is how it is, right? And that is
how it is, yeah.
Right. It's not tov as opposed to ra, or bad. It also strikes me that, a lot of these phrases, even like the one you use, all lend themselves to these mindfulness, kind of takes, like, and I don't know if I missed this. Maybe you said this. I might, so tell me if I missed this, but like ma tovu, you could just be like ma, just ma as a question, as a practice instruction. Ma, what is this? Tovu, right? Or hine ma tov, right? Hine, behold. Ma tov, how good it is, right? Or gamzu, also this, just this. Latova.
I love that suggestion, Mark, of using matavu actually as a question, like what is good here in my experience? Because we find that our attention kind of tends to focus on what's not good, or what's unpleasant, what's
negative, right? The negativity.
Very good reason,
right?
But we can actually train ourselves to notice, to take in more of the good.
Guilty is charged. Okay, all right. Let's close things up. Thank you all so much. I want to thank Max for holding our space today. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Rebecca, for as always leading us, really just setting just a perfect tone for us to move into Shabbat together. And just we hope everyone has a sweet restorative Shabbat. And for those who are having a long weekend here in the States, hope it's a restorative weekend as well. And we'll hope to see you on Monday to practice with Mira Neshama a while. And many blessings, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank